Hey guys, welcome to I believe it's the fourth ever episode of Friday Nights in the Bayou. I'm Grant Sasher, of course, and joined here, if not all the time, mostly by Jace Legitimate Career Football. Today we're going to just preview the 225, otherwise known as the Baton Rouge area, and all the great teams that encapsulate the area, which is where Jace resides. So, and the good thing is we both know the area pretty well because I lived there for quite some time, going to LSU, and then Jace is a resident of Plaquemine. Well, not resident now, but Plaquemine native. I just want to throw that out there. So Jace, you excited to talk about your hometown tonight?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about the 225. I know we've kind of explored some of the other areas, Grant. I mean, and it's really good to get a deep dive into the 318, in the 337. But it's always good to stay at home and talk about what's something I've grown up with, something I've grown accustomed to. Obviously you talked about your dad and the connections you made, especially New Orleans, and he's been around in that area as a college coach. But I grew up around the sport in Baton Rouge. My dad was a coach a long time in the Baton Rouge area, so it's going to be great to talk about the Baton Rouge area and see what kind of football that we have in store in 2024.
If Jace ever mentions dad in the sentence, he's talking about Roland Jern, the longtime coach in the Baton Rouge area, and I think it was East Iberville and Plaquemine.
Yeah, he was a long-time coach. He kind of bounced around a lot of different places. East Iberville, he was there most recently. I mean, as far as a head coach, but was a long-time assistant at Blackman High. Was head coach at St. John, head coach at Terra, head coach at Bel Air. So yeah, I mean, he's been a long time. He's been around for a very long time. The first time he got involved with coaching, he actually coached Randall Blue Gay in middle school. So that shows you how long he's been really coaching. But I mean, he's been around a long time, and obviously, without his influence, I would have been, covering football. I mean, around the sport of football. So, that's why a lot of times get a chance to, talk about the area, the Baton Rouge area, and because I'm pretty familiar with it, obviously being around here all my life.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Baton Rouge has always been a great area of high school football here in the state. Of course, there's a lot of great schools, and really, I think you've seen a lot of great teams as of late. I mean, obviously, Catholic has become a state power, and we'll get to them eventually. But also, I just want to mention, look at the nice, groovy background we got now.
Yeah, I'm a little distracted what's going on back there. Sometimes it's like hypnotized by what's going on in the background. I was like, oh yeah, there's a question that you're throwing in there, Grant. So I like it. I like it. It definitely gives it a pretty cool background.
Yeah, I was actually keeping Jace like, hey, give me like 5-10 minutes because I was actually fooling around with this because this is actually, if you guys watch the intro video, of course we have the highlights of some of the plays from last year. That's going to update as the season goes along, but then it ends with the Friday Nights on the Bayou logo in the middle of the screen with actually this a little artsy thing. So I just let me use that for our background because I just like it's distracting, but it's also got something else going on in the background. So it's just, I don't know, there's a lot of parts moving around. But anyway, but before we get to talking about the Baton Rouge area, I want to mention that this has the city of New Orleans lost a person who's very influential, not only in sports in New Orleans, but high school football across the state. And that's Ed Daniels. Ed, if you haven't heard yet, Ed Daniels passed away at the age of 67 due to issues after he had a heart attack in California where he was covering the New Orleans Saints because there are training camps out there, and he had he's with his wife and he suffered a heart attack, and they were able to fly him back home. Luckily, he was able to be stable enough to fly him back home, thanks to the efforts not only of his longtime friend Ken Trahan, and of course Joe Schuerman, who's the longtime head coach at Delgado. But they were able to work a deal with Gail Benson to fly him back home. So just shows you, how much Ed means to the city that you have Gail Benson, the owner of New Orleans, so he's flying him back to New Orleans where he spent his final days before passing. If you get guys who may not be familiar with Ed, if you live outside the New Orleans area, Ed was very, very, very influential, and what made him so influential was his his high school football show, Friday Night Football,
Mhm.
and it's
Yep.
really one of the first of its kind in the state of Louisiana. Like no one thought it could be done. Like not even around the state, but let alone the New Orleans area, we have a lot of stuff going on. Of
Mhm.
course, you got it was only just the Saints at the time, but it's also the Saints, Tulane, LSU, and the people back then thought there's no way people would tune into a high school show, but people loved it, and it kept going on for 32 years. It's still going to keep going on,
Mhm.
even if he's passed. But
Yeah.
everyone, a lot of people have copied his style around the state because it was just the first of its kind. So he's not only very influential in the New Orleans area, but
Mhm.
across the state. And there's a lot of people, not only just in New Orleans, but even in Lafayette, Lake Charles, you name it, and even
Mhm.
going across nationwide, where he was a mentor to those people. George Faust, we both know George pretty well.
Mhm.
He's a
Right.
long-time sports anchor for KLFY in Lafayette.
Mhm.
He considers Ed a mentor. Like Ed was very influential in how we cover not only sports in Louisiana, but high school sports in
Absolutely.
Louisiana. And Jace, I know you want to have some things to say because I know he also somewhat influenced how you report on
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, he did. And like I said, it kind of really intertwines with what I talked about with my dad, right? Because when I was a kid, my dad would take me to the state championship games in New Orleans, and that was one of the reasons that got me started. But I remember going back to the hotel after all the state championship games were done, and he would put on Friday Night Football and have him and Coach JT Kerr's. First time I saw that show, I was like, wow. I mean, this is incredible. This is a great show, and like really, Ed was one of my influences to really get into the sport and really get into just a profession. Like, man, you can do this. You can talk about sports. You can talk about football. Like, you can make a living out of this. So he was one of the first influences on me to realize, hey, this is something I can do. And I mean, he really played a huge role in that. Every time I got down in New Orleans, I was looking forward to just hear, even though I was there in the Superdome and saw those games earlier that day, I still wanted to go back and hear Ed Daniels, hear Coach JT Curtis. I
Yep.
thought that duo was just so great together. And you can see why it was such a entertaining show for the last 30 years. To have that really analysis from both of them was really great, and they really just fed off each other really great. I mean, their communication, their chemistry was really once in a lifetime, and just get a chance to talk to him. I talked to him. Not, I don't know him on a personal level as much as you do, Grant. But I
Mhm.
got a chance to talk to him a couple of times, especially when I first started to talk with him back when I was working for Lieber Keene. And he was always he treated you with respect no matter who you were. I mean, you can
Exactly.
be the head coach at LSU, or you can be like just like a kid that's an intern that's like interning for WGNO. It didn't really matter. He treated everybody with respect, and that's something that you have to respect. When you have so many people that says so much about him, just you have people reporting like you mentioned all over the nation. It wasn't just a New Orleans thing. It wasn't just a Louisiana thing. You had people from all over the place. And when you have the Saints, when you have LSU, Brian Kelly twice. I mean, in his press conference, I mean, the first thing he mentioned was Ed, and to pay tribute to him. So that really tells you how much influence he really had on LSU, on all the colleges that he was part Tulane. So Delgado Loyola. I mean,
Yep.
just the influence he was able to have on those programs was great. I just saw the interview with Ed Orgeron. Ed
Yeah.
Orgeron talking about Ed Daniels, and he talked about just his ability to really get some of these high school guys' names out there just
Yeah.
because of the show and giving them a fighting chance for them to be seen.
Right.
So for Ed, it was all about the kids. It was all about the players. It was all about the coaches. It was never about me.
Yep.
And he was fair. He was fair in everything that he did, and you gotta respect that. I mean, he was a respectful man, and he was a man of integrity, and he carried on his job. He performed his job in the right way where you want it. So he's going to be definitely dearly missed. And this season just being around LSU, it already feels different. without him being in the room, because he was always a guy that was going to ask the hard hitting questions, and there's a definitely a big sense of loss, with Ed not being in the room, and it's going to be tough to go through that this year. But it's just going to feel weird, just this year in Louisiana high school football too. When you add that to it, because that was one of the biggest things he was a part of, so it's going to be eerie, and I know he's going to be truly missed.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is a guy that, for many of you guys don't know, I actually got my first start in media with Ed. I was actually interning with Ed uh, in between my sophomore and junior year of college. And he taught me a whole lot. And actually, I wrote an article about my experiences with Ed as an intern, and also after even as I've become a young journalist professionally, talking about my experiences with him and how much he's meant to me in my career, and also kind of explain who he is, how he treated young journalists. Because the thing about journalism, I think even Moscona mentioned this earlier. There's two types of journalists: one who are like very cautious of how they move, and so they're kind of cold towards other journalists because it is a very competitive field. And then there's also the people like Ed who are just so welcoming to people, trying to help them out wherever they can because he knows what it was like to be a young journalist, and Ed would
Yeah,
tell you that. And that's why Ed's so cautious to everybody. Just because he knows what it was like to be a young journalist, especially in a very tough and competitive field where there's not really a whole lot of spots, right? You got to fight for
yeah,
everything you got. You got to do whatever you can to make sure you stay relevant in this field because there's a lot of people that want to get into it. And
yeah.
Ed was always willing to help me out, and he was one of the biggest reasons why I was able to write for Crest City Sports because he's really close friends with Kenny, and he
Oh
recommended
yeah.
me to Kenny Trahan.
Yep.
And speaking of Kenny Trahan, I'll say this, man, he took a lot on his plate, man. Like, I don't think people realize that usually they take the pressure off the family so they won't get like thousands of calls and texts from not only people in New Orleans and Louisiana, but across the nation. Yeah, he took it all to himself. So he was updating people, as much as he's willing to give out. And he took all that on his plate so his family wouldn't have to do that. And, I think that just shows you how much of a friend Ed meant to people because, Kim and Kenny have known each other since they're in high school.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, he wanted to make sure that, like, his family was okay. And, and I just want to give him a shout out because he took a lot on his plate, man. Like, that was, I know how he's having a tough time right now, man. But, like, just because, they've known each other for so long. But, he took a lot on his plate. And that just shows you he was willing to do all that for Ed and his family.
Right. Definitely the prayers go out to the Daniels family, and I know Ken Trahan was really close with him, so I know it's really hard on him right now. But we're all gonna go through it, and I know Ed's in a better place,
Yep.
and he's looking down, and he's enjoying his sports from up above, and his legacy is gonna last forever. I mean, you're gonna have kids, grandkids, they're gonna all talk about when they played football. They go back and say, "I remember when I was a kid. I remember Ed Daniels gave me a shout out on Friday Night Football."
Yeah.
So that's gonna be the memories that they'll remember forever. And he's gonna be like for me, I didn't really know him too well, uh, but he's always going to have a place in my heart just because he was one of those early influences on me in order to get involved with this business and even know that there's a business out there or something.
Yeah, man, you definitely truly miss. He always sat right next. Usually sat right by us every Monday. For press.
Yeah.
He's there every Monday for press conferences. So he's usually almost he was there almost every Saturday during LSU season. Whenever because obviously it's too late. So, but he
Sure.
liked to be at Baton Rouge a whole lot, and sometimes
Yeah.
he'd bring his wife Robin too.
Mhm.
So he'd definitely be truly missed, man. It just sucks. Only for us, but his family, his friends, colleagues, the city of New Orleans, the whole state, because he was a truly, truly an influential figure, not only of the city of New Orleans, but the state, but then also one of the last, old school journalists. I mean,
Oh
there's
yeah.
not a whole lot of people like Ed left. So you got to appreciate them while they're still here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They paved the way, right?
Oh, yeah,
So
definitely.
you definitely have to appreciate them and all the hard work and all the different really eras of media that they had to evolve through and go through. So you definitely appreciate them, and you try to take in as much words of wisdom as young journalists as we are, young up and comers as we are. We try to soak in as much as you really can. So in order to improve your game, right, or your way of reporting, because hey, I mean, there's always a way. It's like in sports, right? You're trying to get better, and what better way? You always have great coaches. Well, these are great coaches that can improve your game and improve the way that you report, and Ed was certainly one of those guys.
Yeah, most definitely. And also, I will leave that link of my article I wrote about Ed earlier today, just so you guys can have an idea of like who he was to me as a young journalist. And also, there's a whole lot on Crescent City Sports if you want to read about Ed because he was also a contributor on the site as well. But let's get into talking about some Baton Rouge football, man. Um,
Yeah.
well, let's first start off, with this tough district. We got, obviously Catholic. This brings back a whole lot. I mean, even though they lose Daniel Beal, they bring back a whole lot. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you saw him. You saw him.
Yeah.
Central is a really good team. Zachary's, always going to be great. Skylandville might have a team this year. They look like they have a few pretty good players. That's going to be a tough district this year. So, Jace, what are your overall thoughts about that district this year? That's District 458.
That district's always been top heavy. I mean, you go back and when it was announced that Zachary would be in the district and have those matchups, those district matchups with Catholic and Zachary, that was always great. And then when you add in the wrinkle of having a former Catholic high coach go to Central, leave Catholic, which is for high school coaches, I mean that's one of the top jobs out there for high school football. To leave that situation, go to Central High School, and then be in that same district, that definitely amped up the alley on that, on what kind of rivalry that's going to really be. So I mean, it's going to be top heavy, and obviously Coach Semino, when he first got the job, he knew that Central was going to be good and Central was going to be a player. I don't think maybe people expected how early of a player they were going to be after the season they had last year. But looking at this year, I mean, really, I think the favorites either has to be Catholic or Central right now, just who's all coming back. But after seeing Catholic in the spring and get a chance to see a spring practice, and I appreciate Coach Fuller for allowing me to watch the full practice, and that was pretty cool to see because Corey Raymond was there too to go see Bradford
Yeah.
brother. So picked a good time to go see him.
Yeah.
But really, overall, as a team, I mean, there's not many question marks. I mean, you return. I mean, Amari Clayton at wide receiver. I mean, he's going to be one of the best receivers out there, especially in the Baton Rouge area. They're going to run the football. We know about Jaden Miles, really talented running backs, and one of the top players in the state at his position already. And you have Jeremy Fisher, Ryland Parker. That's a three-headed monster running back. Catholic's always got great running backs. And then you have Blaze Thomasy on the offensive line and all the Division One offers he's been getting. Irv Smith, who's went to a gridiron football camp last year, and he is a beast, by the way. So have him up front on the offensive line and how good of a player he really is committed to Louisiana Tech. Defense is going to be really good. We talked about the Bradford brothers and that duo. I mean, obviously, Blaine, everybody knows about Blaine, but his brother Jacob's getting some really good attraction lately with the LSU offer. So yeah, this is really from top to bottom on both sides. They're going to be a really good football team, and I mean, really on paper, they should still be a championship level football team. The question is, like you mentioned, Grant, is going to be the quarterback position. So how is that going to work out on the things, and especially when you're placing the greatest player at that position in Catholic High, you can say arguably. So
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
gonna be interesting to see. It's gonna come down to the quarterback position, who wins that position. Right now, I think Baylor Graves, I think, is the favorite to win that job. But it's going to see how they manage that position. That's going, I think, pay the difference. I think they're going to be a semifinal type team, but how they can play in the passing game, that's going to be a big factor in what's the ceiling level on this Catholic High football team.
Oh, that's see. I'm sorry. I'm just looking for my notebook of all the Catholic players because I had a notebook of written out all the Catholic players that are coming back and who look really good. It's a really long list. I mean, Sam Norman is another guy who's kind of slept on. He was
Norman.
a big time player in that Zachary game. I believe he blocked a punt, had a reception. He was a great player in that game. Truly, before that blocked punt, it wasn't looking good for Catholic, man. It was not looking for Catholic. He blocked the punt and completely changed the whole game. Jaden Sparrow is another person I know we need to mention because he's a great offensive lineman as well.
Right.
And I remember
receiver.
Amari Clayton. I mean, here's the thing about Catholic, and this is how I explain it to people, who follow they follow high school football. They know about Catholic, but this is the best way I can explain Catholic in a nutshell. They're going to throw a 5-yard slant. Doesn't matter the quarterback because it can be Daniel Beal, it can be Baylor Graves, it could be my 85-year-old grandfather. The receiver's going to catch it, and he's going to gain another 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40, 45, and then eventually a touchdown. Because I've never seen a team that will turn a 5-yard gain into a 60-yard play. They are. It's not like they are an explosive offense. They got just explosive players who could turn something out of nothing. Right. And I always say this too: you could be up 21-0, but it doesn't matter because there's a thing called the Catholic voodoo. I say this all the time. It doesn't matter how much you're up against Catholic. If you just let them, they can score a touchdown, but you got to make sure they don't go. Make sure you score. Because if you don't score, they're going to score again. And if you don't score again, they're going to score again. It almost happened against Warren Easton. It really happened against Warren Easton. Luckily, they were able to mitigate that. But Warren Easton's up 28-7. They nearly blew that lead. That's how scary the Catholic team is.
Is that Brothers of the Sacred Heart magic over there at Catholic High?
But they don't own the school anymore. You already know. You went there. Right when they were starting to change everything.
Yeah, that was my senior year. Was their first state championship they won. So that was the Carolinas' first state championship. So
and it wasn't just football. It was basketball. It was baseball, wrestling, every single sport. It started. Jace was there when everything changed. The Catholic is now the premier athletic program in high school sports in the state of Louisiana. But just it doesn't matter. Like I said, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It could be Baylor Graves. It could be somebody else. They have a lot of great players. As I mentioned, they have a great receiving core. Their offensive line is arguably one of the best in the state.
Yeah.
They have 2 really good running backs, and their sophomore running back is one of the best in the country, and he's the backup.
Right.
He's the backup.
Yep. They've always had great running backs at Catholic. I was smack dab between Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Darius Geis when I was there. So, Catholic's always going to have great running back play, and they got him. And it looks like the next great one is going to be the running back Spears, I believe. So.
Yeah, work done.
J. Miles. J. Miles.
J. Miles, yeah. So, because you also have work done, and then you also have
Kevin Franklin.
Travis Minor, yep.
Minor, so yeah, they've had some great ones.
It doesn't matter. Like I said, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. They're always going to have weapons. Their defense is nasty, and they also have something called the Catholic voodoo.
Yep.
They're either going to come back on you. You could be up 28-0. Somehow the game will be tied at 28-28 at the end of the third quarter. It's either going to be a really bad call, not because it's rigged, unlike a lot of people, all the Roman people, still mad about that play. I know this because I talk to them all the time. They're still mad about the play, even though it could have gone either way. It wasn't a bad call. You also have the John Curtis. That was a really bad call. That one
was okay. I think we can have a really conversation about the John Curtis play. The Rumble play, I saw it right in front of me. From the referee's position, I thought that was the right call to make. But yeah, the Curtis, that's going to have to be another topic for another day.
Yeah, that was a bad call. But at the end of the day, Curry, you can also make the case like Curtis shouldn't have squibbed it. They should have squibbed it. You don't give the Bears anything. You want to make sure they're as deep as possible because you already know the voodoo's on their side. It's not God, it's straight voodoo. But they're also a very talented team. They're a well-coached team. And when you have those two things, sometimes and you have luck, and then sometimes luck may come your way. But guess what? Luck only comes to the teams that work hard, they're coached well, and they have the talent. And that's sometimes when that means you're a good team when those things happen. Because usually those things happen when you're going against a team, you're in a close game, and stuff like that may happen. It happens all the time. It doesn't matter what the level. But they have the talent, they have the coaching, and also the Catholic voodoo. But it doesn't matter because they're Catholic, and they're a favorite to win state again, and they got the talent to do so. I mean,
they're right there.
The road goes to Catholic, and it has been like that for the last 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, when was the last time Catholic did not advance to the semifinals?
I don't think. They haven't.
It had to be the last time they probably didn't make it to the semifinals was probably when you're in high school. I'm not even joking, and that's even
Brother Martin. Those are my sophomore, junior years. They had some tough battles with Brother Martin, and they lost pretty early then. But I would say back when I was in high school because they've at least made semifinals. And be honest, this year's team, to me in that bracket, it's looking like Catholic and Carr to me, in that bracket right now.
And that'll be a great matchup too, by the way. If we get that in the dome, oh my God, the dome will be electric. And that was the thing. That's what the dome was missing last year. Was just teams from New Orleans. I'm not saying every team's got to be from New Orleans, but if you have a team, say you have a Carr going against a Catholic, you're gonna have people that are not even fans of either school that just show up the game because it's Catholic versus Carr. And the dome was kind of lacking those New Orleans teams. Because they help out with money too. They help out with a lot. The more New Orleans teams, the better it is for the dome to make money, for the workers to make money, the city to make money. Just because that's New Orleans money. It's closer to home. So the people that are more likely to watch the TV are the people that don't live that close to New Orleans, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we have more teams from New Orleans. You have more people going to go to the games because it's in New Orleans, right? And it's in the dome. And the tickets aren't really that expensive either. It's like $30-$40. But again, so that's kind of it for the Catholic talk. I knew we're going to focus on Catholic a lot because obviously they are the flagship team now. They basically are, let's say, Louisiana, because 3 out of the last 4 years they've won a state championship. And not many teams can do that at the level they play at, right? It hasn't really happened. Besides Curtis. But even Curtis has done that since they moved up to 5A. You know what I'm saying? So it's a pretty huge feat for Catholic. But anyway, let's move on to Central. I don't want to talk about them a lot because I'm really high on them. I've said that in our first show that they're one of my sleeper teams to make it to the dome. But Central, they started off not the greatest. They lost against the De La Salle team that wasn't that strong last year. But then the rest of the way, they looked like one of the better teams in the state. They nearly knocked out Zachary. They played a really tough game against a very talented Catholic team with a team led by Daniel Beal.
High scoring game.
Definitely high scoring game. And it's Catholic wins. They obviously don't return a whole lot, but they still bring a good bit back from the team that really, got robbed in the quarterfinals against Dutchtown. They beat the living daylights out of East St. John. They upset Neville on the road. And really, one bad call may have affected their chances of going to the semifinals. And really, I think, if they won against Dutchtown, I think they were going to the dome because I think no team was hotter than Central at that moment and not select Division One. So, is there a chance that Central may make a push for their first state title game? Who knows how many years?
I think there is. There's really when you return a guy like DK, right? DK is a guy that can just make plays off the edge. He can make he's a disruptor. He can change a game. When you have your two best players, right, or a defensive end, and you're and at quarterback, then you're looking pretty good. So like a guy that can close games out and a guy that can carry an offense, and really it helps when you return the best quarterback in the district, right, in Jackson. So Jackson Furman. So I think they really have a shot. I mean, last year, I think they pretty much. Now the thing is, I think last year they snuck up on a lot of teams. I think this year there's more of like, okay, Central's a real deal. They're going to be really tough. They're not going to just sneak on everybody like they did last year. So that's going to be the big transition into year two for Coach Semino. But really, Division One non-select. I mean, everybody's talking about Ruston, and rightfully so. But I think there's a lot of teams out there that you can say, hey, who can play in that state championship game right now. I think it's pretty open for grabs, for me anyway. That can play against a team like Ruston in the Superdome, and just knowing what the team did last year and the main core guys that are coming back this year. I think Central can make a run at state this year, and it wouldn't shock me, as good as Catholic is, that Central can. There's a really high percentage chance they win this district outright. So I mean that Catholic, to me, that Catholic Central game usually has been Catholic and Zachary. I never want to talk about Zachary a little bit later. Obviously, we can't leave them out the picture. But for me, I think the winner of that game is going to obviously take a hold of the district.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think really this year, I'm not saying Zachary. It's not Zachary doesn't have a shot to win the district, but really I think the two headliners are Catholic and Central. And obviously, Central is returning a good bit of players. Jackson Furman, of course, I believe is a 4-year starter at this point. Like I know he's played
a lot of football.
Played a lot of football. He's like a 3 or 4 year starter. And I think he's one of the bigger sleepers in the Baton Rouge area. But then also, even though they lose a running back like Damon Blocker, their backup running back Emmanuel Williams was really good too. He's actually really good. I saw him against East St. John when they took out Damon Blocker kind of near the end of the game. He had 2 touchdowns right off the bat. Like Damon Blocker was strictly a power back. Emmanuel Williams is shifty and he's extremely fast too. That's another game to watch out for. Central is going to play extremely physical ball because that's the way Simdo likes it. Look at the offensive line. I mean, the offensive line was just maulers last year, and they will be again this year. Of course, the Mays brothers are fantastic. Steven Raynow in the secondary is really good.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Really good player. I mean, they got some pretty big time players over there at Central. And
I'm not sure you saw this, Grant, either, but I think they're working DK a lot at tight end too.
Yeah, I think I heard something like that. Yeah,
it'd be cool to see him get some looks. Because they lost a Division One tight end, in Wilkinson, going to Southeastern. So it's going to be, that's going to be something to watch out for, putting him on offense and seeing. There's not many teams that want to cover that. So it's going to be. Central's got the firepower for sure to make a run at it. And I feel like they're pretty balanced. On return offense, they got a lot of guys they can return on offense and defensively. They're pretty balanced across the board when you look at all 3 levels, like you just mentioned.
Yeah, and Central's just one of those teams where, I mean, also I think as you mentioned before, the storyline with Central and Semino, that shot. Here's the high school sports don't really make the front pages generally, anywhere, but unless you're in a small town that has a lot of great tradition or whatever. But Baton Rouge is a pretty big city, and that was front page news when Semino left for Central. Because here's the thing: he won the state championship in Catholic his first year there, and the second year there they were knocked on the semifinals by the eventual state champions in John Curtis.
Yep.
And the fact that he just left out of the blue to go to Central, which is by the way, in the same district as Catholic, was just astonishing. And he had obviously you got it's a better you get a pension when you work for state schools. They also I know they gave him a lot of money from what I'm hearing. For people that are in the area from the areas because I didn't realize how much money Central really had. But with the commitment from the school, I mean. The fact that they went out there and just took a state championship winning head coach from a school like Catholic just says how much they're willing to put in for the program, and it's showing.
Yeah, and a good transition to that, Grant, is if you've seen the facility, the weight room that they
I
got.
have not yet. I have
It's
not.
it's one of the top of the line best in the state right now. So Central is investing right now in their athletics and their football program. So it's clearly shown just over last year with the upgrades like that to their facilities, and obviously with hiring a guy who's one of the best coaches in the area and Coach David Simon.
Oh yeah, definitely. And also another player I want to mention because I had to go through some of my notes on my phone. Another player I got to mention is Mason Moore, who is a sophomore
Yep.
athlete. You're going to see him a lot on defense, but he's definitely an athlete. And somebody you need to watch for the Central team. Like I said, the Central team may not have the talent that Catholic does, but they have an experienced head coach. They have an experienced quarterback. And when you have those two things, generally, like you have a great shot at beating even the best teams. Doesn't matter who it is. So Central could definitely play spoiler in this district. Of course, I mean I know we're talking a lot about Central. We have to talk about Zachary, but
Yeah.
Central is a team that you could definitely see making a push for a state title. But speaking of Zachary, we got to move into Zachary. We have to talk about Zachary.
Oh yeah.
For Zachary, for a while, also before Catholic started doing the thing, Zachary was seen as the program of the Baton Rouge area. But with Catholic joining Zachary's district and winning the district the last 2 years in dramatic fashion, both games, and then also a Central team that's creeping up. What is it to expect from the Zachary team this year? Because they for the second year in a row they have a new quarterback, which is kind of unusual for Zachary. You have a brand new running back. You have a lot of brand new players. I know they have one of the best receivers in the state. I believe it's Christian Brooks.
Yeah, he's.
But I mean, but they're very young this year. So what should be the expectations for? I mean, obviously making the state championship, of course, Zachary. But what should we expect from the Zachary team that doesn't really have those players that we're accustomed to seeing?
So with Zachary, I think for the first time in a while, this is one of the few times that you've seen Zachary kind of flying under the radar. Usually, you're talking about them at least in the Baton Rouge area, as one of the 2 or 3 top programs in the area, especially with all the talent that they've had. But this year, I mean, for the first time, I feel like in the David Brewerton era, this is like the least probably been talking about Zachary. And I think they like it that way. I think they would rather go flying under the radar, not being on a lot of a lot of headlines, over the off season, and just kind of go in, do their work, and they still got talent. It's not like the cupboard's dry over there. They still have a lot of talent over there at Zachary, and I've seen it last year. I mean, I've seen them in the fall scrimmage against Edie White when they bred the second team, third string out there, and there's some talented players. They're just young. And so we want to see them out there this year. And you mentioned Christian Brooks. He's one of the top receivers out there in the Baton Rouge area. I mean, I've seen him in the summer, and man, he's looked good at one of the elite camps I saw him at this year, and he's looked really good as far as being a deep threat for him. Caleb Gonzalez, and I know he's really the first time fully starting for him, but he's played some last year at the quarterback position. And Nate James, he's a running back that's played a lot. He hasn't really got starting experience, so they played. It's just about trying to gel together because there's a lot of new weapons defensively. There's some really good guys out there. The Troy Posey's a guy to really watch that we've seen throughout the summer. He's done a lot of really good things. So it's just a lot of guys that have the ability. Kamora McKnight to Hogan as well, the transfer from Mass and Prep, comes over as Zachary. So there's some good players out there, really on both sides of football. It's just talent-wise, can they gel early enough? And now I can see them splitting those 2 district games because those 2 matchups with Catholic and obviously with Central. So I mean, if they can split those 2 games, I mean, they still can be in the running for a state championship. And the Zachary at the beginning of the season is going to look different with Zachary at the end of the season. So I think that's going to be one of those teams that's going to be really hot at the end of the season And that's definitely not a team that you don't want to face because we've known with Coach Brewerton, they've had those questions before, right? When Lindsey Scott left and graduated, that was at the beginning of their run, right? And everybody was thinking, okay, what's next? Or is this going to be like a flash in the pan, or they're going to continue this? And that's when they brought in Keelan Scott and obviously Chris Hilton, that group. And then when they left, I was like, okay, what's going to happen next? Eli Holstein comes in, he continues running the ship. So with David Burton, I mean, they really answered those questions a lot before in the past. And, they got the coaching staff out there. It's one of the best coaching staffs out there in the state. And the talent's still there. There's not a lot of proven talent, but I think this is going to be a team that can be scared by the end.
Yeah, definitely. Zachary, of course, you can never count on Zachary. I mean, Coach Brewer's done a great job there. I mean, Coach Brewer, he could have left that program a couple years ago because remember, he was like a hot name in that West Monroe coaching search.
Yeah, he was.
So a lot of people thought that he could have left for West Monroe, and also he's a Catholic grad too. So when the Catholic job opened up, a lot of people thought he was going to be a hot name for that job as well because he was the offensive lineman on that very first Catholic state championship team. I mean, they didn't win, but they were the first Catholic team to go to the Dome, and then they didn't appear again for like another 20 years. It's like crazy like that, yeah. 20 years. But you can never kind of Coach Brewer and this Zachary Brocker program. I mean, just look at the facilities. Like that just didn't happen overnight, right? It started with Neil Weiner, and then it went over to Brewerton, and Brewerton took it to a whole nother beast. So I mean, this is a program that expects state championship year in and year out. They're not going to go away. Yeah,
it really does. It doesn't feel like a high school football program. It feels like a FCS, at least FCS Division I type of college program out there. The way that they conduct things, the facilities, and just the buy-in from the fans. It feels different. It doesn't feel like a high school atmosphere where every time
they have flashing LED lights, bro.
Yeah.
They have flashing LED lights. Like they have a video scoreboard. It's a public school that has a video scoreboard. Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the better facilities in the state of Louisiana. I mean, a lot of those North Louisiana schools have some of those things that, in terms of public schools, a lot of Louisiana public schools have like West Monroe. If you go to West Monroe, you're going to see the same thing. You don't really, but you don't really see that even in Baton Rouge, New Orleans. I mean, Lafayette. I mean, the only schools in Lafayette that have their like St. Thomas More because they're private. But like you don't really see that in public schools in Baton Rouge. So it just shows you it's just a different world at Zachary. And so, like I said, you expect them to go to state championship every year despite the talent. And really, this is a young team too. So this may not be the Zachary team that a lot of people expect to go to the Dome, but they're just building it up again. They're just reloading. That's what they're doing. And that's what a lot of great programs don't rebuild, they reload. And that's exactly what Zachary's doing.
I think since he's been here, I think every year they made to at least the quarterfinals. I mean, that's an off year for Zachary.
Yeah.
Quarterfinals, semifinals. So I think that you can kind of expect that. I feel like going into the season, especially even with a young team, there's still some Dylan Shellmeyer's a great linebacker for him. Great player he's talked about. Kamori McKnight's a great player for him. So, Javon Dent on the defensive line. So they got guys. It's just trying to see these collection of guys really work together.
Yeah, and we have a lot of teams to talk about in the Baton Rouge area, of course, and we're trying to make this show as short as we possibly can because we know a whole lot about these schools. But yeah, and there's also a lot of great districts, so we're trying to go by district basis. But this district's pretty loaded too. Denton Springs, Dutchtown, East Ascension, Live Oak, St. Amand, and Walker. Of course, Denton Springs had a rough year last year after having one of the better seasons in school history, winning 10 games, going to the quarterfinals. But then last year, they only won 3 or 4 games. Dutchtown, of course, is in the semifinals. And speaking of Zachary, it's kind of a great segue. Yep. Dutchtown was up. Remember, they're up by like 2 touchdowns against Zachary on Friday night. But that was the night where it was raining and lightning.
Mother Nature decided to interfere with that one.
Yeah, nature completely decided to interfere with that one. And, so Zachary got another day because I'll say this. If that game if the game went to the final whistle that night, Dutchtown would be in the dome for the first time in Spurgeon's history. But nature got in the way. Zachary came back the next day, made a stop, got the ball, scored a touchdown. Dutchtown got the ball again. Of course, you saw they had a miracle play where the ball landed off the touchdown receiver's arms, went into Zachary's quarterback's hands. He ran it for a pick six, and then eventually Zachary would end up winning in overtime, where it advanced to another state championship. But here's the thing: Dutchtown returns a lot of players. Now they know the expectations. Guy Mastretta has been there before, so there's no reason to believe that Dutchtown won't find a way to get to the dome for the first time in Spurgeon's history, as they're knocking on the door. EA, new coach, and Brock Bethune, and they're always going to have talent. It's a matter of being consistent, of course, but then also playing up to what they have. Live Oak, very talented team, very young, very talented team. San Amon, who I believe is the sleeper to win the district. They didn't win the district outright. It was kind of a three-way tie. But I think actually San Amon did win the league. I think it was some weird thing where they did win the league because
they all just kind of beat each other last year.
And then Walker is another great team. Yeah, Walker, San Amon, and Dutchtown were all tied for first place. I think San Amon got the edge in the power rating, so they got a higher seed than Dutchtown in the playoffs. But Jace, I mean, going off all these teams, man, who is the favorite to win this division?
Cool. I mean, what's so great about this district? It's really competitive. Like, it's going to be. You've seen years where you have teams tie for district and like 3-team ties for this district. And before I go into who's going to win, the biggest headline about this district is the addition of Prairieville as well. So you got all these teams, right? And then Prairieville decides, hey, I'm not going to go and do the 2-year JV route. I want to dive right into the deep end and get right into it with the EAs of the world, the Dutchtowns, the Denham Springs, the Walkers, the Live Oaks, and let's get ready right now. So how they compete and fare with those teams that are used to the 5A slate. That's what I'm intrigued by about this district overall. But I mean, as far as a favorite for this district, I would have to lean towards Dutchtown right now. I mean, just because of the run that they had last year, and I think, it's crazy to think out of all those great teams Dutchtown had with all the great players that's going through their program. Last year was the first time that they were in this position to go to a state championship, to go to the semifinals. And knowing that if that game was played to the conclusion that night, they were going to the state championship and having that momentum wiped away from Mother Nature, I think that's going to give them really a lot of motivation this year. And they've lost some players too. That's going to be the question. I mean, obviously, our gridiron football defensive MVP, Diego Spears, was a big loss for him. Carter Hanbury, I mean, he did a little bit of everything for them. Caden Mackey, I mean, they've lost some guys. Chase Cangelosi played in a bowl game. Gary Dukes played in. I mean, they've lost a lot of guys. So now they do have one of the best players in the state coming back, in Josh Lewis, who's committed to Missouri, come back. So they got guys. Lathan Riley's a great player for him.
Yep, that's why I say that.
Yep. So I mean, they got some really good guys. It's just, is the senior leadership that they lost last year, is that going to be too much to overcome? That's going to be kind of the question for them. But really, this can be a district that have Samaw. I mean, Samaw is a team that you can never underestimate, because they may never have like the most overall talent, but really, Coach Albert does a great job with those guys. He really coaches them really well, and they got some talent. I mean, on their team. I mean, when you have a guy named Ricks, in coverage over there at Samaw, who's related to Ricks that everybody knows around here, based off of playing at LSU and obviously going to Alabama, Eli Ricks. But they got, I mean, some really good players, a big offensive line. I mean, Walker had a great year with Coach Mahaffey last year. I think Live Oak's a sleeper. I really do. I just think they're maybe a year or two away right now to make a deep run, but they can I think they're gonna be the type of team they can upset a Dutchtown or upset a Samall. They can play spoiler in this district just because of the talent that they really have. So this is gonna be a type of district where they're gonna beat each other up. So there's not really a big heavy favorite in this district. East Ascension, they're always going to be the big bully, especially with the offensive line they've always had. I mean, everybody knows about Bryson Martinez up front for them on the offensive line, one of the best players in the country. So, I mean, this could go in multiple different ways. Wouldn't shock me, like you list 3 or 4 teams that could win this district. They can. This is going to be an interesting district to follow just because of how competitive it is and the style of play. All these teams, I feel like the level of play has really raised up a notch. And then Denham Springs, Brett Beard's always great at playing spoiler too. So when you got this type of district, I mean, even though we talked about the last district being top heavy, I think this is a better district for its depth and quality of teams that can always knock each other out. And then we throw in a wild card like Prairieville and see how they fare in this district. Just keep an eye on this district and how it unravels.
Yeah, and I'm kind of going for you. So I think I'm leaning touchdown too, and they got some great. Like I said, they got great players. Dylan Champagne is coming back. He was not the returning starter, but he has a lot of playing experience, so he's not going to be rattled when those bright lights come on. Of course, you got one of the best running backs in the country, Lakeisha Garvey.
Yeah, he's good.
He's a really good player. I mean, Andrew Fields is a fantastic receiver. So, they have a lot of great players still coming back. And also they have one of the best high school head coaches right now, and Guy Machota. He won it. Was it Redemptorist? I believe where he was the head coach.
He won Redemptorist. He won a state championship at Livonia.
Yep.
So yeah, he's won everywhere he's really been.
Exactly.
I feel like last year was one of his best coaching jobs. I mean, I feel like as far as coach of the year, like he was pretty much my favorite to win that last year.
And really, if you think about it, I mean, so their 2 losses were, of course, we just mentioned the Mother Nature loss. But they didn't even lose to Zachary. They lost because Mother Nature. But then also remember, they also had a early. They had a lead going. I think they had a 2-touchdown lead going in the 4th quarter against Walker, and they blew it. So I mean, their 2 losses came down to like the final play. I mean, it wasn't like they they had 2 losses that really they should have won. To be honest with you. So that was a fantastic coaching job by Mr. Maybe his best coaching job, just because nobody really thought that Dutchtown would make it that far, and they did, and they should have made it to the Dome. But Dutchtown's probably I'm leaning towards Dutchtown, but Santa Monica can't come out. I talked to Coach Oliver the other day, and he's really high on this team. I know he had a strong junior class because I also talked to him last year. He said he had a really strong sophomore class. Now they're all juniors. They got the quarterback coming back. They have most of their offense coming back. The issue right now is that they need to figure out who they're going to have on the inside on the offensive line, defensive line. But he said as the season goes on, they're going to get better. And then also, Coach Oliver's a great coach. He's been there forever, man. Coach Oliver,
20 years.
And Coach Oliver, of course, he's been, he's kind of a friend of the family. He coached with my dad at Tulane for a little bit before he went to Southern for a year. Then he got the job at St. Louis, and he's been there ever since. And he's he's won a lot with a lot. He's like the Mark Stoops of Baton Rouge.
That's a good comparison. Nobody really, thinks about him first, right? But he's just always solid. He's always got the Gators being really competitive. And I mean, they've been a consistent program since he's been there, and the whole reason why he's had the success over there. And like I mentioned, they never really have, like, athletically, you just see them every year. They don't really stand out. I mean, they don't have like the guys on paper when you look at maybe EA,
right.
But they've always been scrappy. They and like playing in the swamp. I can remember like going over there, like as an opponent. That was one of just the most miserable places you can play just because how confined it is and the mosquitoes and everything down there. It's tough and it's tough to play there and try to win. So yeah, Samo's always gonna be scrappy. You can never count them out. And Denham Springs, like you mentioned, too. I think they're going to be a team that can sneak up on guys because Jerry Horn comes back at quarterback, and he's one of the top guys in the area, and got Talon Haynes to throw the ball to. I think they're going to be fun to watch. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be cool. It's going to be cool to see how this district plays out.
Oh yeah, definitely, and of course you can't forget to mention Live Oak. I know that's a team you're really high on. And that might be their year this year, but they have a lot of big time players. The future, including Calvin Urson, who is yeah, and you've said he's really good. I believe it. And J.K. Lee, I said this guy will be the number one athlete in this class. I mean, there's a lot of really young, really good players at Live Oak right now, and they have a great coaching staff there as well. I mean, you also can't forget about Walker. Walker, again, was tied with Cinnamon and touchdown for the league last year. Walker's a great return a lot of big-time players in the program as well. So you can't forget Walker. Yeah, and they have Coach Mahaffey, right? So I mean, you think about this. Like I've told this to people before. This is the most underrated league in Louisiana. It is. Because you got Dutchtown has a great Dutchtown. It's a great program with their state championship winning head coach. EA's, they have a great young head coach in Brock McClure. And Experience has a very solid coach Brett Beard. Live Oak has they're a even though they're young, they're a very talented team. And also they have a great coaching staff. St. Amand, of course, led by Coach Oliver, as we mentioned before. David Oliver's probably the Mark Stoops of Baton Rouge High School football. Walker's led by Chad Matt Happy, who is a multiple-time state championship winning head coach at U High. So this is one of the most underrated districts and in the state. And also, before we move on, Jace, do you have any final thoughts?
On this district, it's just going to be fun to watch. I mean, last year was really fun to watch because all of these teams are good. And you're going to look at the records. It's going to be one of those districts. You may look at the records and say, okay, the team that won this district went 7-3. You think okay, maybe it's not that great. No, it's just they beat each other up. It's a deep district, and anybody can win on any given Friday. And if one of these Touchdown has an off game against Walker, they will lose. If East Ascension has an off game against Sam Mall, they will lose. So I mean, it's just one of those things where anybody can win and anybody can lose in this district week in and week out. That's what makes it so fun to watch.
Oh yeah, definitely. And as we move on, we're going to move on to District 6-4A. That includes Bel Air, Broadmoor, Burley, Estruma, McKinley, Plaquemine. That's your area, bro. Plaquemine, baby. Hell yeah. And St. Michael, Tara, and West Feliciana. And right now the top teams, in probably my opinion, Estruma has a lot coming back. Sid Edwards is the head coach. But in their kind of interesting storyline because Sid Edwards is running for the mayor of Baton Rouge, which is something you should keep an eye on. Which probably one of the cooler stories. You have a high school coach in the middle of the season, I'm going to run for mayor. But he can do that. He can do that. It's because Sid Edwards, he's a legend. But McKinley had probably one of the better stories in the Baton Rouge area last year. And now they moved to Division II Select, which I think was where they should be. And I think
they playoff game last year.
Yeah, they went to the playoffs. Yeah, they did. And now they're Division II Select. I think they have a little bit easier road to make some magic in the playoffs. Blackman, of course, is coming back with with Nico Victorian as the quarterback. He's a pretty solid quarterback. Blackman is always going to have a solid team. St. Michael had one of the better stories last year as well. Won their first playoff game in their program history. Coach Lege's done a great job over there. And Westfall, of course, is always gonna have a great program. And 2 years ago, they were just a game away from going to the state championship. So, Jace, who of the 5 teams I just mentioned, who I think are the top teams in this district, who do you think is the favorite to win this district? And probably has a pretty rugged district. I mean, they're not like the big names. They're not like the big name schools we previously mentioned, but that's a pretty good football down there in District 6-4A.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there that can compete. For the longest time, when my dad was assistant coach over there, it was pretty much Plaquemine, right? And that was who's going to win the district, and when they had all those great teams. But now it's like it's Plaquemine's not the heavy favorite. When you have a Struma coming in with Sid Edwards and with his pedigree and what he's done over his Hall of Fame coaching career, I mean, that just, Struma's got athletes. It's just a guy that can lead this program. And obviously, he's brought that right to a Struma to get them involved for competing for district championships. St. Michael, look at the run that they had last year. And it was a really historic year for them. It was a magical season for them. So I think this district has a lot of question marks though, just because like with St. Michael, is this going to be just a magical run, 1 year flash in the pan type of year, or is this going to be something more than that? Because there's some guys that are going to have to replace Preston Santino at quarterback. So they're going to come in with a new quarterback. I know Brock Hamilton's had a good offseason for him, and he's pretty much going to be their guy leading the way. But I mean, I mean, John Martinez comes back at running back, so as a guy that you can lean on at the position. Johnny McCarty's a pretty solid receiver, so you have guys there that can lean on. Plaquemine, that's probably I think it's a 3-team race right now. To me, I think it would come down between Plaquemine, St. Michael, and Estruma. I think it's going to come down to those 3 teams. And right now, I would say Plaquemine, just because you return that experience at quarterback. And I think with having Nico Victorian back, you have him, you have Tyrese Mosby who comes back at running back. And remember the game that we actually covered Plaquemine St. Michael last year. Tyrese Mosby really kept Plaquemine in that game against St. Michael. Made a lot of plays right there. So they got really good athletes over there. And it was just, Don Williams, his first year as a young coach, trying to navigate his way on his first year. But you have them, Estruma. I mean, Kyrie Paul is one of the best players, most underrated players in the Baton Rouge area because he played running back, receiver. So just because of the experience at the quarterback position, I'm gonna get the slight lean to Plaquemine. But really, it wouldn't shock me if Estruma wins this district. Wouldn't shock me if St. Michael wins this district. And I think West Feliciana is pretty young. They had to rebuild a whole lot. Obviously, you lose Joel Rogers at quarterback. And I knew that senior class last year, it was going to be tough. Like, that was like their last big group of seniors. So I think it's going to be a little bit more of a rebuilding year for West Feliciana. But, Bel Air's got – now, the thing about Bel Air, they have a really good running back that not a lot of people are talking about. I mean, Caleb Joseph is a real deal. I mean, he's a really talented running back. And maybe not a lot of people will notice that, but I think Bel Air might have the talent to really make it interesting in that district. So Brewery, you still got Brewery in that district. Brewery has got some guys to lean on, and they got some guys to make things interesting. So it's McKinley, like we said, they hosted a playoff game last year. Ron Allen's a really good coach. Coach Eric Holden's on the staff, so they're well coached over there at McKinley. So to me, Grant, I think this district's wide open for the taking, but the slight edge right now, I'm going to go with the Plaquemine Green Devils.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the hometown kid's going to go with the Plaquemine Green Devils. But anyway, of course,
especially when Jack goes. Maybe that's kind of the
Plaquemines, they've always dominated the circuit, and of course, you just mentioned that there's a lot more parity in the circuit now due to all the great coaches. Of course, Sid Edwards and Struma has really rebuilt that program, and now they're expected to go to the playoffs. Now, I mean, last year was the first time they've been in the playoffs in who knows how long. And I remember you told me a story where Sid Edwards was literally asked a question by one of the players, like, "Hey," because they were playing St. Thomas More. The high school, and everybody knows what St. Thomas More. Well, these guys have never really been to the playoffs before. And he asked, and then I can't think what if you remember this correctly, you told me that one of his players asked if they were playing the middle school because there's the middle school in Baton Rouge. There's the middle school in Baton Rouge also named St. Thomas More, so he literally thought they were playing the middle school.
Yeah,
and he's like, no, you're going to be going against a team that likes to throw the ball around and they're probably the most athletic white guys you're ever going to see in your life. That is St. Thomas More.
Well, Coach Edwards even said like he was glad they didn't really know about St. Thomas More because like usually any other team would be intimidated as hell going to St. Thomas More, but they didn't know what they were getting themselves into, so maybe they play a little bit more free out there. But I know he joked about that, but yeah, but still, I mean, Struma, it would not shock me. They win this district. I mean, to me, it's a 3-team race, and I feel like it's like 51-49, like percent, right? I mean, like no heavy favorite, but St. Michael with some of the guys they got coming back at key positions, and building off the season they had last year. Plaquemine, just because of the talent they have, and a veteran quarterback coming back. And then when you got Struma with some of the playmakers they got and the coaching staff they have, I feel like it's going to come down to those 3 teams.
Oh yeah, and like St. Thomas was a great program. Like I said, like they just for sure. There's like they have like 3 or 4. They have a quarterback who's either 6'3", 6'4", who can throw the ball pretty far, and they have receivers that are all literally just Jack Besh. They're like Jack Besh.
Yeah.
That's what St. Thomas More is in there, and they go to the state championship almost every year. And but we talked about that in our previous show with Mike Coppage. So if you want, go back and watch that if you want to see if you want to see St. Thomas More and what we talked about, then moving up to Division I select. But anyway, going back to the district room right now. I mean, of course, I just mentioned Struma, McKinley. I think really, to be honest with you, I think McKinley. I'm leaning towards McKinley, man. I really am.
Okay.
I think they're a great. I think like McKinley's not really a team that you're like, oh, they're going to win the district review. We know about. I think everyone knows about McKinley, but Coach Ron Allen has really turned around this program, man. Like, I mean, and I was actually just looked this up. He's actually the very first white head coach at the school, because the school was a historically black school. It's like the few historically black public schools left in the state of Louisiana. So like so I thought I was like, oh, well, first of all, I didn't know he's white. I thought he was black. I didn't know he was white. I did not know that because
his brother was a longtime AD at Plaquemine.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, Scott Allen. So that there's that in-district connection.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, and he's done a great job of the program. The last few years, they kind of got stuck playing a Division I select, which is brutal. I mean, the last few years they played against St. Aug and Alexandria, which are much bigger schools than McKinley, because McKinley is only about like 800 kids, but due to the new classifications, they're now a Division II select, which is where they should be, based off their numbers, but then also it's even. It's more even that way,
Mm-hmm. Right, because they used to play in Catholic district, so now this is the right for them to play in.
They're literally they're a 4A school going up against Catholic and Zach. Yeah. I mean, not Zach, but they're in Catholic league. Like there is no reason for them to be in that. This district is where they should be at. Point period. This is where they should be. And Coach Ron Allen, of course, has done a great job. Also, having a guy like Eric Holden on the staff, who's is a longtime head coach, of course, in Louisiana, and we both know very well from our time, from my time at Gridiron Football, and then also Jace still works there, of course, but he's a great guy and also a great offensive play caller too. They also upset St. Michael's, which I think shocked a lot of people.
Yeah, they did.
St. Michael's is riding high, so
only reason I'm not on McKinley this year is because they lost 21 seniors last year. So I think that's the only reason I have the other teams. Now, I feel like they're the sleeper in this district. I feel like they can beat anybody on any given Friday. Wouldn't shock me, but that's why I don't have them as a favorite right now this year.
Yeah. I'm going for the long shot. This is not my first time going for the long shot. Sometimes I do. I remember last year where because we were talking about the game matchups, it was Carrico and Shaw, and Carrico was like one of the harder teams to say. I mean, even though they lost a close one to Acadian, and nobody thought they were going to lose against Shaw. And I was like, you know what? I really like this matchup. They're playing on the road at Shaw. Shaw has enough talent, and with coach like Tierney, I'm like, hey, they're gonna. I think this is the perfect time to catch Carrico, and they beat them. And Next thing I know, 2 weeks later, I was on the sidelines of Shaw Evangel, and one of the Shaw alumni guys, like one of the big booster guys, was like, "Hey, nice call, nice pick." I was like, "He's talking to me." Because I didn't realize people like. I was like, "Oh shit, people actually watch it." Well, people, I know people watch what we did last year, but I didn't realize. Oh wow, we got people calling on the sidelines like, "Great pick." So that's a pretty cool experience. But I'm okay with doing the wild card. I picked LSU to beat Alabama last year.
Yeah.
That's not the week of, not before the season. The week of, it didn't look great. It didn't look good, but I'm cool with it. I'm like, we're gonna say McKinley, the McKinley Panthers, 2024 just the champs. I'm calling it. I know they lost 21 seniors, but there's a culture, and that's what matters. They got a culture.
Yeah,
they can do it.
They got a belief system. They believe in something, and I think if you're a McKinley fan, I think that this is something that you can be really excited about the direction that they're really heading.
And I said this. I said that Elijah Haven was going to be the number 1 quarterback in the country. Not only was he the number 1 quarterback in the country, he's the number 1 overall player in the country. I still have a script. I sent it on Twitter. I told y'all, but I'm okay. But I'm bold, man. I like being bold sometimes. Sometimes I like to play safe, but sometimes I like going for it in 4th and 1 on our own 41-yard line, just like St. Charles got.
Yep.
But anyway, another time. This is how you start arguments. This is how it's easy. It's easy to start arguing with Jace because this is the thing that we get hot on. This topic right here. It will be 10 years from now. We're still talking about that game. But anyway, moving on. Let's talk about some teams in District 6-3A. You got U-High, Master Prep, and Parkview. U-High, of course, have returned a lot of players. Keelan Moses, the LSU commit, a linebacker, also plays a little bit of running back too when they need short yardage situations. But then also Emil Picarella, who's probably the top quarterback. Actually, he is the top quarterback prospect in this state for the class of 2025. A lot of great players all across the field. Of course, also have to mention Umar Brown, who is a top 10 player in his class. Mazur Prep, they always going to have talent. Great coaching staff. Madison Prep is always going to be in the mixture whenever it comes to a team that has enough talent to make it to a state championship. Parkview Baptist has always been a solid program led by head coach Stephon LaForce. Even though the biggest question is that they lose a guy like Abram Johnson, but they do retain some talented receivers, including Brock Como. So, Jace, kind of break down this, these top 3 teams right now, because all 3 of these teams are what you consider to be the favorites to win this district. But I mean, the favorite right now is U-High, but kind of break down each team.
Yeah, U-High is one of my, borderline. Yeah, I gotta look at my rankings and everything, but I think they're borderline top 5 teams coming back this year in the state, just because of everybody coming back. Emil Pecorella, he's got a whole off season, and last year he was great. He completed over 70% of his passes, set a bunch of U-High single season records. It's scary to think he's got a full off season now to go through everything. So it can be pretty crazy what the numbers he's going to put up this year. I think he's going to have a great season. He's got Trishad Bush to throw the football to. He's a mismatch as a wide receiver, tight end, flex guy. Zay Martin, a receiver to throw to as well. Jan Gloston. Now, they got a luxury. Keelan Moses, a guy like that can play. He's just a football player, right? You can play him a linebacker. He was an impact guy, running back. But this year, I think he can really focus on linebacker and just going all out on defense because they got some running back options. Sage Ingram, he actually went to one of our camps earlier this offseason. He's special. He's going to be a really good one. Actually transferred from Madison Prep to go to U-High. So he's going to be a special running back. Just keep an eye out for that name, Sage Ingram. He's going to be really good for him. And then when you have, I would say, this is the best offensive line in the state, for sure. When we talk about Lamar Brown and what kind of special player he is, as far as one of the top players in the country, but Preston Jones is a really good player. John Abear is an all-state guy. Jarvis Brookshire is a really good player. So they're pretty much loaded over on the offense and defensive line. Alec Haynes at linebacker. You have him, and you have you have Keelan Moses. That is quite of a 1-2 punch right there. You have Keelan's brother as well, Manuel Moses. So they're loaded from pretty much from top to bottom, and they don't really have a lot. Oh, Case and Hill as well on the defensive line too. So they don't really have a lot of weaknesses, and then they also have the motivation of missing out on the state championship the last 2 years by pretty much by the very end. They lost it at the very end of both those two games the last 2 years. So they got a lot of motivation, a lot of talent, and when you got those two things combined, U High is going to be really dangerous. I do not want to play against them. That's for sure. So they're going to be obviously the heavy favorites in this district. But when you go to Madison Prep, Coach Landry Williams does a great job over there, and they've always got talent. I remember first going over the program and visiting Landry Williams. He was covering PE, so I went over to the school, and I was like, "Man, these high school kids that you're watching, y'all got some guys coming up. There must be freshmen, sophomores, right? The Jace, these are fifth and sixth graders. That shows you how much they
Oh,
got going
no.
back then. That's how big those kids were.
Yeah.
So like that just shows you what kind of talent they have over there. But they got a lot of really good players. Tylen Johnson at quarterback. He's one of the most
Yep.
underrated quarterbacks out there in South Louisiana. Calvin Spears is a mismatch. He plays. A guy that big can run that fast. He is a mismatch for anybody to go up against. Obviously, they're big on the O line. They've always been big on the O line, and they'll have a big O line this year. Defensively, they're going to be really talented this year. A lot of really good players. Leyland Dagry as well on the at linebacker. So yeah, they got some. They got some guys. Alfred McKnight's a good running back. For him, Andre Gibson's a good playmaker. So they're going to be really talented. We know this about Madison Prep, and they're going to give really you high all they can handle. That's going to be a team that's going to be a sleeper for a state championship. They've always been, but this year they're going to be a sleeper to make a run. Parkview, with Coach LaFours and what he's done this year, obviously Abram Johnson's the biggest storyline with him replacing a guy like that, with the guy going at the quarterback position, because he was a great player for him. But they lost some major guys. Caden Turo at running back. He signed with Northwestern. Mason Warren, who you saw in their Gridiron Football Bowl game, had an interception in the bowl game. He's going to Southern. He was a two-way guy, linebacker, DB and running back. They lose some guys in the offensive line, Mason Marie. But they, like you said, they do have a receiver in Brock Como that you can, evolve an offense around. So you have a guy like that. The quarterback position is going to be fun to watch. But they're going to be well coached. They're going to be in position. So Parkview is going to be a team that you can't just overestimate. They're going to be right in the picture in the thick of things. So those are the teams every year when we talk about this district. It's kind of like, it reminds me of like the 5A, the first 5A district we talk about when we talk about Catholic Central Zachary. It's the same thing here with this 6-3A district. Those are going to be the three teams that you really talk about. So that kind of headlines this district, and I would say the same thing here. Now, Port Allen is going to be a fun team to watch. I have to admit that because Brennan Gibson, if you have a chance to watch him play, I've called a lot of his games when they go against Episcopal. Brennan Gibson is actually Don Gibson's son, the head coach at Port Allen. He is dynamic to watch. He is really fun to watch. Offense, defense, he returns kicks. He's probably one of the best kick returner, punt returner guys in the state. He can make a play anytime he has the ball in his hands. And having a guy like him, he gives you a shot each week and every week to hang in there and make a lot of plays. So Josh Howard at running back, linebacker, two-way guy for them. So they're going to be really good. Um, and I know Brandon Gibson kind of like a jack of all trades. He even kicks and punts for him. So, but Port Allen's going to be a really fun team to watch too. Don't leave them out. So, but I would say just because of how it lines up, I think Mass and Prep probably make it a game with U High, but I feel like U High it's their district rules.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, this is UHI's district to lose, and a lot of great players, a lot of D1 players on this UHI Cup team, and the expectation for them is to go back to their first state championship since 2021, where they ended up
They
beating
played at
UHI.
they played at ULL
Cajun Field. Yeah, Cajun
Field.
Field.
Field. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
They
and
did.
so yeah, and they've had some tough outings. Of course, they lost against Dunham in the semifinals 2 years ago in a very
Yeah.
close game, high scoring game. They just missed out on the state championship appearance against St. Charles on the road. Both their losses were on the road too, by the way.
And they lost both of them on the last play of the game.
Exactly
Like
right,
they lost
exactly
on the last play. So that just shows you how close they really were.
right, exactly. And now they make the move up to Division II select, and they will have I'll get even though St. Thomas More and Turner's Catholic won't be there, still have to go get Shaw. St. Charles also moves up as well. You got a talented team in JFK who I'm very high on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great teams, even with LCA, St. Thomas More, and Turner's Catholic moving on to different divisions. This is still going to be a very talented division. Yeah. It's still going to be very wide open. It may not be as locked down as it was the last few years, but it's very wide open. There's a lot of great teams. Master Prep is also in Division II select. They're a very talented team. I can also see them making a little bit of a push for state champions. They got the talent to do it.
Alan Johnson,
staff,
at quarterback, you got a chance. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have a great coaching staff who's been there, done that before. Park Street Baptist, like I said, is another team you need to watch for. Even though they lose a good bit from last year, they're still a very well coached team by Stefan Laforce, who's one of the better coaches in the Baton Rouge area. I mean, he's won a lot of games at Parkview, and also he was a great player himself at Louisville. For any of you guys who are big
Christian Life,
yeah, Christian Life. Oh yeah, Christian Life. Yeah, and also what was I gonna say? If you're a Conference USA fan, like old school Conference USA fan, you probably remember the name of Stefan Force.
Oh yeah, he was a great player back at back in Louisville.
Louisville. Yep. And also part. I think he's not part of. Well, actually, no, he's not part of the. Is he part of the Petrino coach? I don't know. Long time ago, man. Long time ago. But anyway, yeah, let's move on to our next topic. Or division, and this is a division that you're very familiar with.
Oh yeah,
District 8-2A. You got Dunham, who is a very talented team coming back with one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Elijah Haven. As I said before, I called it, and I'm so glad that it didn't, because I thought it was going to keep growing to like 6. I thought Elijah was going to become like 6-8 and then focus on basketball the entire time, but I think it slowed down a little bit. 6'5", 210, number one overall prospect for the class of 2027 at the quarterback spot. Right, and exactly, well deserved, and still has a lot of room to grow. But they also have a lot of great players as well. JJ Harris is coming back. They also have Trevor Hammond coming back. Chris Thomas. Chris Thomas was a pretty big time player for them last year, and then also they bring in Jarvis Washington from Madison Prep, who's going to be a big time target for Elijah. So they're gonna have some pretty big offensive weapons for them this year. Also, we'll have another great defense over there at Dunham. But then also you have Eastville. Eastville is always going to have talent. They're always going to have talent. You got Episcopal, who you're very, very familiar with as Jace. We got as he is also the play-by-play announcer for the Episcopal, and that's a VSN. So if you have VSN and you're Episcopal fan, or you want to tune in to watch Episcopal play, this guy right here is the play-by-play announcer. But then also I want to mention too in this district is Slaughter. Slaughter's a new team. They move up from 1A to 2A. I think they're a very interesting team. They've done pretty well for being a new program, and they run like what's it called? I'm looking for like a split, like it's a spread wing tee.
Yeah,
and it's really interesting offensive concept. So, and they've been pretty successful. Then they got a lot of great athletes. So, Jace, what do you think about this district this year?
Yep. Like you mentioned, Grant, I'm very familiar with this district, calling a lot of the Episcopal's games. But I know, all right, guys, Episcopal VSN, brace yourself, Episcopal fans out there, okay? Because I'm not sure how much hate I'm going to get towards this, okay? But Dunham is the favorite this year. So I mean, you just have to. I mean, Elijah Haven. I've heard a lot of great things last year. Talked to Jack Como's dad during the off season, and talked about that there's this kid that's going to be really really good. And he talked about raved about him in the off season. Got a chance to see it. I mean, you told me about him, Grant, when you covered him against Parkview, and that really that was an offensive show with him and Abram Johnson going back and forth. But get to see him in person and get to call his game. I mean, I knew how good he was. I just didn't know how truly good he really was. Seeing him in person, and to get a chance to really talking to him, get a chance to see them in the spring and go to their practice, get a chance to talk to Elijah. Man, very mature, above his years. I mean, you don't think
Way above his years.
you don't think you're talking to a. I think he turned 15 years old last year. When I
Yeah,
called
that game you called, yeah.
I think you're talking to like a 35-year-old. I mean, that's what it
Yeah.
seems like. Just the maturity that it really has. I think the question with them is going to be really opposite from some of the other past teams that Coach Warren had when they had big lines that year when they went to the state championship game. They had a big offense and defensive line. Now, I think this year that's going to be the question mark. How will they hold up in the trenches? Because they graduate a lot of guys. They're not as big there. Now, they do have a lot of weapons. Obviously, Elijah Havens, the top quarterback, top player in the 2027 class. And they got J.J. Harris from Southern Lab, Heyman as well, and running back. So they got a lot of offensive weapons. They're going to score a lot of points, but how they can handle in the trenches, especially when they're down. So that's going to be the biggest question mark for them. But I feel like that they are the favorite in the district. But Episcopal, everybody's talking. I mean, asking me questions. Episcopal fans have been calling me about Episcopal, about what's my feeling on them this year. Obviously, losing a guy like Braden George, and that's going to be tough. Braden George was a special player at Episcopal. And obviously, you saw him in the Gridiron Football All-American game, win the MVP award, and now he's going to have a great career at Navy. Great kid, like Elijah. Just a great kid, wise above his years. So the question mark about them is, I mean, Reed Chauvin is a proven running back, and he's going to be obviously the bell cow. But how does it look this year? You don't have a running back. I mean, you have a really good running back in Reed Chauvin, but he was like the power runner to Braden, who was the speed runner, the guy that can make the big play. So who is going to be that guy? I think that was going to be kind of the question heading to the offseason. And Zach Q. I mean, Zach has always had a great arm. He can throw it. I mean, he's got a really strong arm. It was just about controlling it, and kind of reeling that in and finding that touch on his throws. I think that was the biggest thing throughout the season. Now, he got better. I think that Dunham game was like a turnaround point for him. He got better after that, and he actually played some really good football towards the end of the year. So they're going to have to throw the football a lot more. That's going to be the thing about them this year, just because you lose a guy like Braden George. So that's going to be the key for them. But they losing a lot of guys up front. So it's going to be kind of the same thing with like Dunham. But how Episcopal is going to be able to be effective throwing the football, because they are incorporating that in their offense. That's going to determine what kind of season it's going to be for them.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, Dunham, of course, as I mentioned, they got a lot of talent coming back on both sides of the ball. Obviously, you can't, it's hard to mention Dunham without mentioning Elijah Haven, but they also have 3 of their 5 starting linemen coming back from last year.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they have one of the better receiving corps, and not only in their area but in the state of Louisiana. J.J. Harris is an all-state caliber type of running back. I mean, this guy is was rushed for over 1,000 yards the last 2 years as a freshman and sophomore for Southern Lab, and that's also sharing carries with Damarian Asbury as the running. Amarian Asbury as the running back, or as the running back for Southern Lab. So, I mean, really, if you think about last year, he won them the game late in the game. He had this 2 big time for touchdown runs late in the game to seal the deal for Southern Labs state championship win last year. And really, probably, and if you did the MVP voting at the end of the game, he probably would have won it, right? So because of that strong fourth quarter performance. So he's a big time player, but then also on defense, of course, Trevor Heyman is also a great linebacker for them. We got Reeves Johnson and Jonah McLean coming back, and the linebacker room as well. Grant Morgan, Bronson Bonneville, Richie Montgomery. These guys are very experienced. You got a very experienced linebacker room and defensive backfield. So this is a very talented team coming back. Episcopal, I think you couldn't say better. I mean, Reed Chauvin is going to be the bell cow. I expect a lot of big things from him, but they also need to find another running back who has that playmaking ability like a Braden George or a Reed Chauvin to kind of let this offense run. And also, Zach Hugh has to play a bigger role in this offense in the second year starting quarterback. So I think they're going to finish behind Dunham.
They're going to use Nathan Sanchez as the other running back. So if people were wondering about who's going to be the guy that places Braden George's role, Nathan Sanchez is very fast. So, I mean, obviously not the type of playmaker like Braden was, but he's still a guy that can make the big play. He's got the top end speed. So he played a receiver. He's going to move into that running back role. And that made a lot of sense to me when Coach Bourgeois told me at media day that was going to happen. And they're pretty experienced in the back end too, in the secondary. So I think it's the same thing with Dunham on the defensive line. I think for both Dunham and Episcopal, I think that's going to be how they can get better at that position group, especially in the interior. I think that's going to really determine how good both those two teams can be.
Oh, yeah, and another team I want to mention, too, is Slaughter Community Charter. I know that's not really a school that Jace is really familiar with. As I mentioned, they're a brand new school, and I was able to interview their head coach, earlier this summer for an article I did on them. But they got some pretty good players as well. I mean, last year they made the playoffs. I think they made the playoffs the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, they've been pretty decent. Yeah.
They've been pretty decent. They're moving up to 2A, so they have some pretty big challenges ahead of them. But they also have some key players, including Takemian Ford, who threw for 1,200 yards last year, 19 touchdowns, and then also ran for 418 yards, 7 touchdowns. But the star player for this team, man, is Joshua Thomas. And now, Jace, you probably need to and I know you're doing scouting for the All-American Bowl game, but you need to watch this kid, Josh Thomas, man. 574 yards, 23 catches, 10 touchdowns, and also led the team with interceptions with 5. I mean, he's a big time player on both sides of the ball. This team will run through Josh Thomas, and he's a big time player. I've watched this. I mean, I know you can't really go off the highlight tape, but I was impressed with this highlight tape, and his coach loves him. They also have a strong offensive line as well. And these guys have played each other for a good little bit. Even though I know they're probably they're not as good as maybe the Dunhams and the Episcopals, but I think they can make a solid case. I think they can be a team that finishes in 3rd place.
Yeah,
I can do that. Yeah, I mean, that's a team that you definitely need to probably keep your eyes on for any of you guys who are high school football fans, and then also Josh Thomas. Jace, you need to keep your eyes on this kid. I'm just letting you know because I know you're doing a lot of scouting. I'm just putting his name out there for not only for Jace, of course, but also for everybody who's paying close attention to Baton Rouge high school football. But anyway, I think Dunham has a strong chance to make it back to the Dome. They have the talent to. So I think this is a team. They're definitely in terms of select Division III. They're in my top 4 or 5 of teams that will be in the Dome this year. You know what I'm saying? So
I think the chance to be better than last year, which is scary.
Definitely.
I mean, I think they're a heavy favorite to go back to the Superdome and having even a chance to win it this year. Anytime you have a guy like that throwing the football, I mean, those type of guys come once in a lifetime, really.
Right.
Like as mature as he is, and a guy with the playmaking ability that he has. So to have him, I mean, calling the Episcopal games, I mean, it's going to be something to try to like cover him and call his games for the next 3 years. So that's going to be it's going to be rough. I know it's going to be rough on Episcopal, but yeah, I mean, Dunham to me is the I know Pittsburgh fans going to get on me on this, but especially how big that rivalry really is between those two programs. But I have to say Dunham, especially the last 2 years. It's been kind of going back and forth when I first started calling games. Episcopal won two district championships in a row over Dunham, and then Dunham's flipped that the last 2 years. So yeah, it's gonna be fun to cover that.
Yeah, yeah, man. This very. I mean, I'm gonna enjoy watching. Well, I probably won't be able to watch the game this year. But I'll be paying close attention to both programs, as I'm really high on the Southern program led by head coach Neil Weiner. As I mentioned before, he helped build that Zachary program to
Yeah.
kind of what it is now. He kind of was the godfather of the precursor to what Zachary could
Yep.
become. And then also he's done the same with Dunham, bring them back to the state championship for the first time since 2004. And they've also Dunham has shown consistency, because really Dunham's never really been a consistent program if you actually look back at their program
Right.
history. But it really wasn't until Coach Weiner got there where they were able to build some consistency. Like what they were winning, they weren't really what they're doing now. We're winning a district championship every year. They weren't really doing that before he got there, and now they're one of the bigger brands in the Baton Rouge area since he's gotten there, of course. And I think sooner or later he's going to bring his state title back to Dunham. Definitely.
Just look at the guys, the big names he's able to draw in. I mean, Derek Stingley Jr. and he played at Dunham, and you see what he's doing right now, and Elijah Haven, he's going to be the same thing. So just bringing that attention to Dunham from an athletic standpoint has really risen them as one of the top programs, consistent programs in the Baton Rouge area.
Yeah, man. So before this is a last topic, and
last topic.
Here's why I'm saying that, because we're both pretty tired, man. But
yeah,
we're preparing ourselves for Friday nights, man. Like we definitely are. So, but this is the last topic, but we're gonna talk about some 1A schools.
Okay.
So you got Central Catholic. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
we both know about Central Catholic.
Yep.
Both covered them extensively. Of course, Chad Elsie will be back for this very talented Central Catholic team. You have White Castle coming back. White Castle is always going to be talented. They're always going to be team you need to pay attention to when it comes to these smaller schools, especially when you get in the playoff time in Division 4 non-select. And then you also have the defending state champions for Division 4 select in Southern Lab. Southern Lab will lose a good bit, of course. They bring back Amari and Asbury back, and they also have one of the better quarterbacks in the state, Jerry Botley, but they lost a bunch. I mean, Chad Jones obviously transferred to. Well, if you guys haven't heard, he transferred to St. Aug. We just mentioned that J.J. Harris transferred to Dunham, and they also lost some players to graduation. Dylan Day. Yeah, man. Like, there's a lot of different players that they lost. So, so we'll start with Southern Lab first. I mean, what do you expect from the Southern Lab team this year? Given that they've lost a good bit of their players, even though they're so talented team, they lost a lot of their players, man.
They did. They did. But Southern Lab, they came to our media day. I mean, as far as like some of the marquee teams that came to our Gridiron Football Media Day, at least the one in Baton Rouge, I mean, U High and Southern Lab. I mean, Southern Lab as well came. And just like U High, so I mean, it doesn't matter with all the guys they lost. I mean, they are confident. They are a confident bunch. Coach Osbury is a confident coach, and so they're going to be just fine. They got the talent. I mean, they got a lot of really good guys coming back. Even though it feels like, hey, you're all replacing the quarterback position, but Jerry Bow is just going to come in and they're going to be just fine there at the quarterback position. Amorion Asbury that can really do it both ways too. Not only as a running back, but he can play defense for you too. And just seeing him in person, and interviewing him in person, like imagine trying to tackle him. I mean, he's a load to bring down. And they got some good players. PJ Norman is back for him. Marquez Williams, Keenan Butler. So I mean, they got some really good guys on their football team. So they got the confidence, they got the swagger over there at Southern Lab. So I think they're going to be just fine, even with some of the the guys they lost, and obviously Dylan Day was an all-time program great for him, and the things that he was able to do. They would not win a state championship if it wasn't for Dylan Day last year. Obviously, making that play against Washington Christian in the semifinals.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean they're going to be just fine. I think Stone Lap's still one of the favorites, and they're making a little bit of a dynasty right here. So if they can win this state championship, I believe it was be like 3 of the last 4. I believe if they win a state championship, and the only one they lost was when Washington Christian won a state championship 2 years ago. But they're going to be just fine. Ascension Catholic, that's another team I'm familiar with. I called a lot of their. There's been a lot of classic matchups with them and Episcopal over the last couple of years. Chad Elzy is just so fun to watch. I saw their first play of the season last year, and it was just a precursor to what kind of year Chad Elzy was going to have. It was the opening kickoff in St. Michael, took it all the way to the house. And that showed you from that point on that Chad Elzy was going to be a problem, and he was. He was a Gridiron Football Player of the Week, and we thought, I don't think he's going to top it. He runs for 9 touchdowns like the next week. So he's so fun to watch. He's a very special player to watch. And if it was any other year than a year like this, when it's loaded at the running back position, he'd probably be like the number 1 running back in the state if it was like any other year. But this year's just so loaded at the running back position. The headline here is Lowell Narcisse coming in as the head coach and covering them. He was one of the earlier players I covered for Louisiana Football Magazine. So it's one of those first guys. I'm like, man, am I getting old? Because like I covered him at high school, and now he's coaching. So like I'm feeling like a little bit of an old timer here, a little bit.
Old timer. Jeez, he's our age. He's our age. He was in my graduating class. He's literally our age.
Yeah,
he's only maybe what? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, what year you were born? Like 97, 98?
97.
Yeah, I was born in 99. He came out in like the class of 2017. He was part of LSU's really heralded class of 2017. There's a lot of great players in the 2017 class, but he was one of them. I graduated in 2017. Like, he's literally my age. And now he's the head coach at like one of the top 1A programs in the state of Louisiana. I mean, it's crazy.
It's a high pressure job over there, too, and that's why there's a reason why it's hasn't been really stable the last couple of years, just because how high pressure it is to win over there, just because of the talent they have in that area, and it's gonna be fun to see how well Narcisse, because he's been coaching a couple of years. It's not like he's been maybe 2 or 3 years, and he was supposed to be the OC at East Ascension. Yeah, actually met up with Coach Mathern and him when he was over there, and then just a couple weeks later, that's when the news broke about Lowell taking the job at Ascension Catholic. So yeah, I mean it's gonna be fun to follow and see how he kind of navigates, because he's still pretty. Now he's a bright young mind for sure. He knows what he's talking about. He's one of the Briar head coaches coming up, but this is still his first rodeo this year as a young head coach. So it's gonna be intriguing to see him kind of navigate that throughout the year.
No problem. Yeah, definitely. And the thing about Ascension Catholic too is that like that's a rugged. I don't think people realize how rugged select Division IV really is. I mean, Washington Christian. I mean, as we mentioned, Southern Laps, Washington Christian, Vermilion Catholic, St. Martin's, Riverside has a lot of players coming back. I mean, there's a lot of great teams in the. Oh, by the way, Kenwood. Remember, Kenwood's joining.
Kenwood, yep.
So, I mean, there's a lot of great teams in Select Division IV. I mean, and also with the expectations of Ascension Catholic, they expect to be in the dome, but it's a really rugged road to get there, man. I've been a big fan of the Ascension Catholic program since I started covering high school football in Louisiana. A lot, that was a couple years ago. And so they have some really high expectations, as they should. They have a running back like Chad Elzy, who is a legit D1 guy. I mean, he's part of this really deep running back class we have this year for the class of 2025. I mean, I'm good. You can list names all day at this class. I mean, you got 2 guys who are committed to LSU. You got 1 guy who's committed to Michigan. You You have another guy. There's a lot of big time running backs.
Mid in there.
Yeah, exactly right. So, and he's one of them. But nobody was. The man ran for over 400 yards against like Opelousas Catholic, and Opelousas Catholic's a great program too. Like,
yeah, 9 touchdowns playoffs, I believe.
Yeah, like that's not a scrub team. Opelousas Catholic is a good program, and he ran for over 400 yards against them. You know what I'm saying? So, like, it's just like that's a big time running back. But another school also want to mention, we should mention is White Castle. I know you're very familiar with the White Castle because, from your time with Lee Keene, I know Lee was always high, White Castle still is, and you've covered him with Gridiron. So, what is to be expected of the Bulldogs?
I think with Division IV non-select, it's pretty wide open. If you think about a lot of teams moving up.
Oak Grove.
Like Oak Grove, right? When them leaving, that kind of leaves it to like maybe Haynesville, right? Or I'd say White Castle. I think White Castle should be a favorite. They played. I saw them in the spring game against Scotlandville, against a 5A team, and they held their own against Scotlandville. Now they got a receiver, Grant, that you need to really pay attention to. Shadrick Allen, they threw just bubble screens to him, and he was making guys miss, juking guys, and I think he scored 4 touchdowns in the spring game. And he had maybe 6 or 7 catches. In the other 3, he was juking everybody and making plays. This kid is so fun to watch. He's kind of been on the smaller side. That's the reason why not a lot of attention has been going towards him, but he is fun to watch. Shadrick Allen's really, really a fun player to watch. So that's a guy I need to pay attention to. That quarterback can throw the football. Is a really good thrower of the football, and they got 2 defensive linemen that can start at the 5A level. That can block some holes. So they got talent. White Castle's always had talent, and really, to me, with Division IV non-select, Coach Mark Brown is a good coach too. So I feel like that is a team that you should have early as far as a team that could win state as long as they stay healthy in Division IV non-select.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. White Castle's always going to be a program that you need to watch in Division IV non-select because they have the talent to always make a push for a state championship. And, yeah, that will just about do it for our show. Probably it's a longer show, but that's what happens when we got 2 dudes talking about Baton Rouge football, something we're both very familiar with. Of course, I covered a lot of high school football for Gridiron, so a lot of big-time games out in Baton Rouge. So I'm very familiar with all these programs in Baton Rouge, despite me being from New Orleans. I cover a lot of New Orleans football because I'm from here, but I was in Baton Rouge, so I got to experience some Baton Rouge football. And Jace is always here to give us all the latest scoops of what's going on in Baton Rouge because he's so well-connected in the area. His dad being a longtime coach in the Baton Rouge area on the 225. So, that was just about do it. I'm your host, Grant Sashray, founder of Ruger's Push Media, and also a writer for Crest City Sports. This is Jason Sojourn of Gridiron Football. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, make sure to follow Ruger's Sports Media wherever you like to use social media. The show will also be on Spotify, so make sure you turn to Spotify if you want to listen to the audio version of it. And then also make sure to follow Crest City Sports, Gridiron Football for all your best high school coverage in the state of Louisiana. And also, before we go, please keep praying for Ed Daniels' family. This is a very tough time for his family. And then also, just not only for his family, his colleagues, friends, family, city of New Orleans, the state of Louisiana. That's a huge loss to our community. And then also was a huge influence of how me and Jace cover high school football. If it wasn't for Ed, I don't think I'll be doing this. And Jace could probably be. Now, Jace probably would have found his way into it because of his dad. But But how Jace covers it, very similar to how Ed covers it because he really traveled to every single high school. It didn't matter who you were, where you're at. It didn't matter if you're in the best parts of New Orleans, you're in Metairie, or you're in the hood of you're in the lower 9th ward, or you're in deep and back into the woods of Tishomingo Parish. he made sure to cover as many schools as possible and make these kids' days. So he will be very missed, and we'll see you soon, dog, or bud, or sir, or however he want to call it, because he was a lot of names. But he liked to use bud, and you like to use sir. So we'll see you later, sir. Peace, y'all.